Present day. Present time.
So Microsoft literally just got into the handheld market not that long ago, and they just got here and they already think that they could dominate. Now, Microsoft is one of those companies that every time that they arrive to a market, they think that they could dominate the market while knowing jack shit about it, and they think they're just gonna take control of it. And when they can't take control of a market, they try to sabotage it. What am I talking about? The Steam Deck. Handhelds. They've arrived to this market. They're already trying to take over, and they've announced that they're pretty much not really making consoles in the future, and they're sticking to handheld. And I want to discuss a few topics about this because this is one of those topics that I really love, and Microsoft is pretty much sweating bullets right now. But before that, I want to give you some examples of places that Microsoft has sabotaged. So, does any one of you guys know what a Zoom is? Gen C, do you guys know what a Zoom is? Anyone? No? I thought not. It's not a story Microsoft would tell you. So Zoom was basically an iPod Touch, but Microsoft Edition, and never took off because they arrived way too late. Let me give you another one. Windows phones. A lot of people don't even know Windows phones is, and our next generation and this generation has no idea what the heck a Windows phones is because they arrived too much. They've tried to do this in the market, in the phone market, and the MP3 player, and they freaking fell every time. Every time Microsoft arrives to a place, they automatically think that they're gonna become the bigdickbitch.com. And don't look up bigdickbitch.com. I swear to God, if you want to save your sanity, don't look it up. You fucking degenerates. Anyway, back to Microsoft. So yeah, they always tend to like sabotage what they can't have. And if you think that the Game Pass prize was bad, you have no idea what Microsoft has done in the past. And now they want to destroy Valve and the handheld market. And, I want to share a little bit of knowledge. So I'm going to tell you a story. So, wait, what was the story again? Oh, yeah. Let me tell you a story of Microsoft the Unwise. Well, it depends who you're asking. So, before we get into the story, I actually want to explain something. I recently became a VTuber, so some of these things I might have to explain. And if you found this channel, I feel so sorry for you guys. Anyways, moving on. So, before I get into the story, we gotta explain what proprietary software is and open source software. So, proprietary refers to a software where the code is not public. You basically, the company works on the code so no one could steal it. Because if someone steal it, they take the code and they're like, oh, I could do that better. And then they make money out of it, or they take it somewhere else. So now that we got that, now open source software is completely different. Now, open source software means that you write the code and you make it public where anyone could grab and they could make their version of it, or they could pretty much work on it with you and help. And so basically you give back to the community, and it actually has really fast progress. And Bill Gates and Microsoft saw this as a big threat back then in the days. So a little bit of lore too. Microsoft Windows wasn't actually like an operating system on its own. They actually bought something called MS-DOS, which was a TTY, a text-based operating system, and they basically rebranded that into Windows, and that's why you get the GUI and stuff. But yes, that was the predated to Windows. So, and Microsoft has always been shading. I know some people are noticing that they're shading now, but Microsoft has always been shading. It came to the point that the US government actually sued Microsoft for monopolizing on the operating system market. Not only that, on the internet browser, they wanted to force people to use Internet Explorer, and they were buying off so many browsers, forcing everyone to use Internet Explorer. They did not want a competition. So, now getting back to a story. See, a long time ago, when I was inside my father's balls, something happened up in Microsoft. Now, if you guys don't know what the Halloween files are, the Halloween files were basically a PDF, not like the Crit PDF, like actually a PDF file Microsoft on how they intended to destroy the open source community and the Linux community. Because you got to keep in mind, at the time, Linux was viable. Now we could run games and run like whatever, but back then, gaming on PC wasn't really that popular. Like it wasn't something that you see everyone do. So a lot of people that use computers were either for, you know, school, professional work, and so Linux was open source and it was free. And this bothered Microsoft because this was the time that they were trying to monetize not only the operating system, but they're also trying to monetize every software that ran on your computer. And open source software offer a lot of these softwares that do the same thing or even more for free. So he saw this as a wasted potential. You weren't monetizing it. And so Microsoft wrote this manifesto and it got leaked. So what does this manifesto talk about? Well, basically this manifesto talk about how Microsoft was going to destroy the open source community and the Linux community, which is part of the open source community. And he was going to do this by buying off GitHub. And after he bought GitHub, he was going to introduce these licenses that limit what you could do with open source software in order to slow down the development of software. And if you're actually in the tech world, you know that first of all, Microsoft Div ended up buying GitHub, which is a place where developers come to collaborate on open source projects. And this licenses that slow down progress. And if you are in the tech world, you know that these things actually happen. This is an actual thing. Microsoft has bought GitHub and they introduced these licenses that actually slow down the progress. But doesn't mean that there's still community and development that don't really like to play by these scrolls. So yeah, Microsoft, every time they see something that's a threat to them, they get really defensive and they just try to sabotage everything. They've tried again and again and again and again. So you might ask yourself what this has to do with the handheld. Well, Microsoft clearly sees the Steam Deck as a threat because it's actually doing a lot of progress. And if you know anything about Linux gaming basically runs Windows apps through something called. Actually, let's talk about that later. Okay, so when Linux gaming has been performing neck to neck with Windows, or a little bit behind, and it's basically what the Steam Deck is using, which is Proton, and that helps Linux gaming. And yeah, it's working pretty neck to neck or almost as good. And what's happening is that a lot on top of that, kernel level anti-cheat games don't work under Linux because developers don't want to support it. But the more and more gaming gets popular, and how the economy is, a lot of people are not playing kernel level anti-cheat games or multiplayers because those games are just too monetized. So Microsoft sees this as a freaking threat and they really want to get rid of the Steam. They want to eliminate their competition if they are right too late. So let me give you another story. So the whole reason why Proton got developed, well, Proton, there's already a version of it called Wine, which was Wine's basically means it's not an emulator. It runs everything into like a sandbox and it translates that in a way that you could actually run it on Linux, which is why we could play Windows games under Linux. And so it's getting pretty close to beating Windows, and Microsoft is sweating bullets right now. So yeah, going back to the story. So Gabe, at the time when Windows 8 was around, he did not like that they were forcing people into a different operating system. He did not like that Microsoft had too much power when it came to gaming. He used to actually personally work at Microsoft, and it came to a point he was like, you know what? I don't think I like this. And, the first Steam machine was fail, but that was like the starting development when it comes to gaming on Linux the way that we actually recognize it nowadays. So yeah, and before Microsoft was like, "Oh, we're the top dogs. Nothing is gonna happen. We're on the top. We have no competition." And now they're swelling bullets with Steam. As you can see, Steam is like the biggest market when it comes to PC gaming, and it actually modernized a lot of things to the point that it's actually making a challenge to Microsoft. But it's not. Microsoft is not going to win. I know they think they're going to win, but it's just simply too late. They're not even going to make consoles anymore. They're gonna make only handhelds, and this is going to backfire. Along with that Game Pass, what's going to be the point? Like, I don't know. They always realize this thing so freaking late. Let me tell you another little story. So, the Xbox console. The Xbox console originally wasn't even supposed to exist. So this happened because a couple of engineers in Microsoft snick around Bill Gates, and they actually stole part of the kernel of the Windows operating system to develop, as we know, the Xbox. And the Xbox was basically running through in a way it was running the games like a virtual machine to actually boot them up, was actually similar to something that already existed at the time, which was Wine. Wine eventually turned into Proton, which is the better version that Valve developed. That is a fork of it. It is more plug and play. You can see you don't got to configure things. But yeah, so now they think that they could just jump into the space and just be able to beat Linux, and just like, I don't know if you know the Rock Ally or if you tried it, but that thing does not perform as good as the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is blowing all these handhelds out of the market. And so Microsoft once again wants to jump into this market, and they think that they can monopolize in it, but they don't realize that they're so behind. Valve actually went as far as providing them all the resources that they have and all the knowledge that they have, so Microsoft could actually make their own handheld, and Microsoft still didn't manage to make something that performs as well as the Steam Deck. And they're going as far as trying to normalize Xbox. See, I told this many years ago that the Game Pass is only not as profitable for game developer, but I said that when it comes to Microsoft, I'm really skeptical. I'm a Linux user myself, and I always, every time Microsoft introduces something that's good, I always question it, because Microsofts tend to introduce something once they get you used to the environment, they're going to lock you in and they're not going to want you to leave, so to make it harder for you to leave. They done this with many softwares that are only in that platform, and now they're doing it to Game Pass. They're doing this, and now people don't want to leave, even though the price increase. Not only that, they're trying to normalize cloud gaming, which is something that they've been trying to push. And since they can't push it, now they're fucking forcing it down people's throat and getting that juicy big old daddy Microsoft green cock down your throat to force you into it. But hey, there's other options. Who cares? You don't have to be a Microsoft. You don't have to be tied to Microsoft. There's options up there. And I think like this whole thing is really threatening Microsoft due to the fact that they're so aggressively trying to get into this market, and Microsoft doesn't really jump into a market. They tend to be like those kind of that they feel like they have no competition, and they're not going to jump into a competition or into a market space that they have no experience unless they actually see a threat. And Linux has been making some moves. Like, we're pretty close to actually beating it, and they're sweating bullets. Like, we got millions gaming at Microsoft now, and you can actually see that if you look what's that, the Valve survey? Yeah, there's a lot of stats, and it's gone over by a lot. And I want to talk back to the proprietary thing and the closing open source. So Microsoft does this. Microsoft is a really shitty company. Like I said, they haven't done something shitty. This is not the first time that they've done something shitty. So Microsoft in the past actually has done this, and this is not only Microsoft, but a lot of companies, they make a fully open source software, and every time there's a fully open source software by a corporation that's backing everything, people in the open source community get really skeptical, because Microsoft and these corporations, what they like doing is they like making an open source software and saying, hey, it's open, anyone can collaborate. And when they see the community and they start helping and they basically build the software, they make it proprietary and kick everyone out and get free labor. So every time you see something good like this coming from one of the company, just keep in mind this corporations do not care about you. All they care is about money. They do not give a shit about you. And along with Microsoft and Alive, I know a lot of people are becoming more self-aware of how bad Microsoft is and how they gatekeep, how they basically lock you into operating system. They're becoming more self-aware, but this is not new for Microsoft. Microsoft has been being shady for decades, and they've pulled shit like this. And matter of fact, that thing locking people out of the operating system, they do this every version basically, except this time they took it a step further and actually limit low hardware. So when it comes to Windows 11, certain hardware can't run, even though if you actually know your way over on your computer, you could actually trick your motherboard to bypass the checks to be able to install Windows 11 on supported hardware. But the average person is not going to know how to do that. But anyway, that's all I have to say for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, as always, I don't freaking know what to say. Bye.
dim, dam, dadilam, vacarme s'en va dans l'oubli éternel. Et Gustave dom guardeam, didim, dididididam, lutes serado didom, seram, dim, dim, da da da, dim, dim, da da da, dim, da di dam, dim, dim, da da da, dim, dim, da da da, dim.